Happy St. Patrick's Day to you. I got great news, good news, and so-so news, and then a lot of breaking news. Let me start with the great news. 3 great new affiliates have joined the hundreds of stations that pick me up every day, and they're all in the Hudson Valley in New York. WGHQ 920, 92.5 FM. WBNR 1260, 96.5 FM. WLNA 1420, 94.3 FM. Collectively, they are the beacon, and they are in the heart of the Hudson Valley. So I'm talking from Albany down to the tip of New York City, and to the west and out to the east of Connecticut. All those people to be converted to right thinking. That's just great news. Welcome aboard. I'm so glad to have you. That's a fine stretch of American road that I travel a couple of times a year when I go from Virginia up to Maine. Got the craziest off-ramps I've ever seen. It's like taking your life in your hands to get some gas. But other than that, it's a great place. I do have to say, the Cavaliers are going to crush the Knicks in 4. I hate the Yankees, and the Giants are almost as bad as the Browns. I just wanted to get that out there so that there's no confusion. But I love New Yorkers. You're always welcome to call. I'll give you a little bit of news about myself when the first broadcast day of the month rolls around. That's when I do bio. Until then, you can look me up over at hughhewitt.com. You'll find everything about me there. But I am really excited. Thank you to the Beacon. It's a great market. It's a fabulous group of people, smart radio folks, lots of people on the road. And I'll bring you the best. And I'll bring you the news of when the Cavs crushed the Knicks in 4. Haven't forgotten 2 years ago. Not going to forget it. Hated the Yankees since they took Craig Nettles and Chris Chambliss from us, but I'm not bearing a grudge. We got a lot of news to cover. 2 big things. Donald Trump has warned Iran. We are holding you responsible for the Houthis shooting at our ships. Not going to mess around with proxies. The Houthis are a battalion of Iranian mercenaries. They're mercs. They work for the Iranians, and if they continue to shoot at the Truman or our destroyers and commercial shipping, Trump's going to strike Iran. That's good. Number 2, there's a hearing coming up in an hour. I am, by the way, for my new audience, I know a few things about the law. I've been practicing law since 1983. I've been a law professor of constitutional law since 1996. I worked at the Department of Justice, the White House counsel's office, been confirmed by the United States Senate. I worked at OPM. I know my stuff. This is a political question. It's non-justiciable. This judge should just slink away into the back of his room. Donald Trump sent terrorists who had been sent here by the Venezuelan government as armed proxies in a not-so-gray war. And the Enemies Act of 1798 is on the law. It's good law. It can be used. It was used. It was appropriate to use. I don't think it's headed to the Supreme Court. I don't think the Supreme Court is going to take it. They want nothing to do with this. But they may be forced to by knuckleheaded left-wing judges. Nice guys. I'm told they're nice people by people who know them. I know most of the judges in D.C. But I did a fair bit of political question work back in my Justice Department days and my circuit days as a clerk. I know a little bit about it. It's a political question. It's non-justiciable. I talked with Andy McCarthy about that. We got Doug Burgum coming up today, Senator Tom Cotton coming up today. We'll talk about reducing our enormous debt by selling off American assets, land, oil, critical minerals, coal. We'll talk with Doug Burgum about that. Talk about Iran and China with Tom Cotton. We got a lot to cover there. Let's start with Donald Trump, though, on Air Force One today. He wanted to make sure people knew. He knew what he was doing on Saturday when he sent the bad guys out of the country, and he didn't care what the judge had to say. Cut number 6.
We've got this great event, this great facility, great business, and of course,
great
6.
Workers. We got the wrong cuts in there. Okay, we'll check that and get it back to you. Donald Trump was on Air Force One today, and he is very, very happy about the fact that he's got the Enemies Act. And I see a lot of people saying, well, it was passed in 1798. It was passed along with the Alien Sedition Act. And the Sedition Act was repealed in 1920, but the Enemies Act was not. And the Enemies Act has been used repeatedly, and it's been repeatedly upheld. Now, there is no dispositive precedent. It's never been applied upon the declaration of a president to a gang of terrorist cartelistas. So we'll see whether or not that holds up. Let me also say to my new audience, that's very rare for us to make a mistake like that out of the box. We'll get you good stuff. We got him now. Okay, let's go to the president on Air Force One, cut number 6.
What is this that the Alien Enemies Act has only been invoked 3 other times. They were all during times of war. Do you feel that you're using it appropriately right now?
Well, this is a time of war because Biden allowed millions of people, many of them criminals, many of them at the highest level. They emptied jails out. Other nations emptied their jails into the United States. That's an invasion. And these are criminals, many, many criminals, murderers, drug dealers at the highest level, drug lords, people from mental institutions. That's an invasion. They invaded our country. So this isn't, in that sense, this is war.
He's absolutely right. He said they're gone. Cut number 2.
I can tell you this, these were bad people. That was a bad group of, as I say, hombres. That was a bad group. When you look at them and you look at the crimes that they've committed, you take a look. You don't get any tougher, you don't get worse than that. You understand that.
He's right. I mean, I just can't wait to hear a federal judge say, no, he shouldn't have done this. Democrats are trying to make that happen. For those of you who are new in the Hudson Valley, I show up on Special Report quite often, usually on Friday night. I'll be on Fox on Wednesday morning. I show up on Fox a lot. And I was on Special Report panel after hearing Jessica Tarlov worry about the Department of Justice and what Donald Trump is doing there. And I'm a veteran of the DOJ. I went there off the D.C. circuit in 1984. I worked for 2 attorneys general, William French Smith and Ed Meese. And Jessica was, non-lawyers really shouldn't do this stuff. They really have no idea what they're talking about. So I got a chance to weigh in on that. Cut number 26.
Hugh, your thoughts about this in the wake of everything we've seen out of Justice, the FBI, et cetera, over the years?
Thank you for coming to me, Brett. Put me in the column of DOJ alum who served as a special assistant to 2 attorneys general running the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrants program. Those of us who served in the Reagan DOJ have been disgusted for the past 4 years by the non-leadership of Merrick Garland, by the politicization of Jack Smith, by the attacks on the president, by the lawfare that was a previous low that was never experienced during the Reagan years or the Bush years. It is appalling to anyone who is objective about what has happened at DOJ. And Pam Bondi is doing a great job in setting it straight along with Todd Blanche. I'm sure Kash Patel is doing the same thing at the FBI. There is no DOJ where you are partisan. There's only a DOJ where the rule of law ought to apply. It was abandoned for 4 years in an attempt to get Donald Trump, and they're setting the ship right.
And now I want to go back to Tom Homan on a White House gaggle this morning. Our borders are talking about the deportation of the Enemies Act aliens. Cut number 8.
You say to those who claim you're using a 200-year-old law to circumvent due process?
An old law? It's not as old as the Constitution. We still pay attention to that, don't we?
But some would say this is...
How many more times?
Thank you, Tom Homan. I love that you're using an old law. They don't realize the companion law that people didn't like, the Sedition Act, was repealed in 1920. The Alien Enemy Act has not been repealed. There have been a lot of Congresses since then. It's still good law. Just because it's old. The Constitution is 1798. Now, it's been amended a few times, and it's changed over the years, but it's 1798. So this is 8 years later. And I'm just amused by non-lawyers talking about stuff like this. Let me do a little business for you friends out there. I have a great sponsor on this show called ReliefFactor.com. I take it every day. I'll take it next hour because I left it out in the other room. And I've been sick. For my new friends in the Beacon, I was down for like 2 weeks and caught the bug from my grandkids. My wonderful Genghis Kate, 5-year-old granddaughter, all she did was sit in bed when I visited her on vacation 2 weeks ago, and I brought it back. It was my gift. And so after 2 rounds of antibiotics, I'm feeling okay. Didn't get a lot of workout in this weekend. Relief Factor not really called into question, but I do use it every day. I'll take it on the air in hour number 2. I just want to let you know, you'll hear about Relief Factor a lot if you're driving around the Hudson Valley. I want you to really take it and try it. I've only used one supplement. A lot of people in the radio business, a lot of people in the television business are big supplement users. Not me. I'm an old trundler. Done a dozen marathons. I can't count how many half marathons and 10Ks I've done. I'm still out there, slow as a bush. I mean, really, trees pass me. I'm that slow. But I'm out there. I get my miles in. But I've done nothing for 3 weeks because I've been sick as a dog. Relief Factor cannot do anything about viruses. But it can kick back in when the exercise comes, and I'm going to be doing it, and I want you to give it a try. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. Also want you to know that every Lent, I'm Roman Catholic, for the benefit of those. I'm an evangelical Roman Catholic Presbyterian. I'll explain that some other day. But I'm Roman Catholic. If you're driving around, it's Lent. Like I don't eat meat on Fridays, and I didn't go to church this weekend, but I do support food for the poor during Lent. And I ask you to as well. $100 feeds a child in El Salvador to the good priests and pastors of Food for the Poor at work in El Salvador. The banner is at the top of HughHewitt.com. You can call old school 855-359-4673, 855-359-4673, or just go to Food for the Poor, Feed Their Future banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Pleased to have Olivia Beavers of the Wall Street Journal join me. Olivia, it was good being on Special Report with you on Friday night. Olivia, we were worried about a Schumer shutdown Friday night. Of course, that didn't happen. Now we have a Schumer ouster underway, a Schumer shunning. So how's the Schumer shunning going among Democrats?
I think the blowback that Schumer is receiving is a little bit more than maybe he anticipated. He's had to cancel stops on his book tour, any sort of kind of public appearances, citing security concerns. And you have Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Bernie Sanders sort of traveling and doing this counter messaging. And like I said on Special Report, this is one of the first times I can remember in a long time where Republicans so successfully boxed in Democrats. Jeffries and Schumer were on different pages, and now Schumer is facing this grassroots anger because they funded what they think is the Trump administration's priorities. But I do think that there's an important thing missing here, which is it's being described as sort of this ideological difference, but I actually think underneath it's tactical. So some Democrats think that they should be sort of letting the Trump administration own the economy. And if they were part of a shutdown, they would be in part to blame and they would be owning the economy. They want Trump to own what they think is going to be potentially a bad economy. They want Trump to be owning these things, but other parts of the party are saying, no, we need to fight. We need to fight in all different ways. And you saw that.
Olivia, I'm just smiling because they have no idea what they're doing. And that's fine. The Democrats did this to Republicans. I'm a Republican. It happened to us in 2009. It took us a year and a half to figure out what was going on and the disaster that was Obamacare rollout to get some feet under our ground. They're afraid of the fact. They're not afraid of Trump failing. They're afraid of Trump succeeding. And once again, they've thrown in with the 20 side of an 80-20 issue, the ACLU and all those people in favor of giving due process rights to the TRA and the MS-13 gang members. Have any Democrats come out to fight on their behalf today?
I don't know if it's that so much as I've heard Democrats expressing concern about the Trump administration bypassing rulings from the courts. And in their mind, the moment that the courts sort of be dismissed or be ignored and create
But that has not happened. You don't let anyone get away with that, right? That has not happened.
Yes, yeah, that's their concern, and they're seeing some messaging that we saw in the past, going after the courts and judges, which both, as you know, Republicans and Democrats have had their clashes with the courts, depending on the judge, depending on the case, depending on whatever. But that has been elevated to me repeatedly by Democrats, not so much this specific case, because I think, as you said in the earlier show, it's a little tough to message against really bad criminals,
hardcore terrorists and cartel members. Yeah. Let's turn to the budget reconciliation. The Senate needs to find more money. Doug Burgum is going to be my guest next hour, and I think we're going to make some news. We're going to talk about how he wants to sell off surface rights to home builders and mineral rights to oil producers and energy producers, and he wants to get a lot of revenue that will help in the reconciliation budget process. Do you expect are Republicans going to get their act together rather quickly because they have to get the tax cut passed if the economy is going to take off in time for the midterms in 26?
I mean, I think that the deadline that they've suggested is they want to have this basically packaged together by Easter, which is a pretty ambitious timeline. And I'm very curious to see if they make it. I have my doubts, but they are trying to move quickly. They want this to be funded, but there are some snafus, like you just pointed out. That's also why Republicans are trying to push for this separate rescissions package and tie that into sort of savings that they would be touting along with the budget blueprint and the reconciliation package.
Yeah, they won't get anything else. I'm not looking for miracles because they need 60 votes for everything except budget and reconciliation. And they're not going to have Chuck Schumer against a wall again. They beat him like a mule, but he's not going to get trapped again. I'm just really curious. Is AOC going to run against him, in your opinion, for the Senate in New York?
So he's not up until 2028. So there's definitely a question of whether, there's so much time, and that amount of time in politics is forever. A lot of things can change. So I don't think that Senator Schumer is worried about the anger now impacting him in a couple of years. But that doesn't mean that someone like AOC isn't positioning herself to be the new face of the party in a couple of years or even go up against him. But there's just so much time to calculate.
He's had such a bad 6 months. The hamburgers, well, just about everything that he's done has just turned to ashes. I'll miss the guy, but there comes a time when you just got to hang it up and move it on like Harry Byrd did and George Mitchell did. And I think Chuck Schumer, as leader, is done. Olivia Beavers, thank you for joining me. Olivia_Beavers on X from the Wall Street Journal. Always a pleasure. Good to see you. Hey, Generalissimo, you are we should introduce to people as my non-producer, to the folks in the Beacon in the Hudson Valley. You're a non-producer. You're kind of like the Angels. I bought 4 Angels tickets yesterday.
Yes.
I'm going to go see them play the Guardians
of course
on
you are.
Sunday, I think April the 6th with Cookie.
Opening weekend, right?
Opening weekend. Right. Guardians are at Angelstown, and I'm out here in California until the end of April. So I'm going to take Tim Cook and Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and Mrs. Cook, and we're going to go see the Guardians beat up on that. But is Trout playing anymore?
Trout is playing.
Just checking. Has he ever?
He's playing right field.
Okay.
And actually, this may be the best chance all year that the Angels will beat the Guardians because it will be the first time their pitchers have thrown and their arms won't have fallen off.
Okay, I just want you to know, we are in baseball hell here. We live in baseball.
Yes, we are.
So our Yankees fans who are listening in the Hudson Valley, that's my non-producer, Dwayne, who's been non-producing the show for 25 years. He's wearing green today.
Not
if you're watching on the
the
Salem News Channel.
27 cut sheet today.
I'm not using it because it didn't work. But what did work is he used to be a lot bigger than he is now.
Yes.
He used to be 50 pounds bigger than he is now because he was big Dwayne, big non-producing Dwayne. Now he's skinnier Dwayne, skinny Dwayne. MyPhDweightLoss.com is our sponsor, 864-644-1900. That's
864-644-1900.
Do you think anyone driving around listening to the Beacon in the Hudson Valley could use to lose a little weight? You ever see any Giants fans who are a little husky?
I'm sure that can be.
I think I've seen some Giants fans who are pretty giant. I think they made hockey jerseys for Rangers fans, don't you think?
Yes, yeah. I believe that there are some people that could take use of this. Yes.
They might like a few beers, a few frosty ones at the Rangers games.
I'm sure
they're going to need them at the Knicks games. So what does it say about beer on MyPhDweightLoss.com?
They're not big fans of beer at MyPhDweightLoss.com because that's liquid bread.
That's too bad. 864-644-1900. You really ought to go and try that out. Also want you to try out Chapter Medicare. Chapter Medicare. All you have to do is get your cell phone out. All right. See, there's my Cleveland Browns orange cover one if you're watching on the Salem News Channel. And use the hashtag 250 and ask for Chapter Medicare. Keyword Chapter Medicare. They are taking care of seniors who cannot figure out Medicare because there are 24,000 plans. Literally, 24,000 plans. And it's a big data problem. And I talked to Chapter 2 weeks ago. I said, come join my team. We got a lot of people who have parents who are making this decision. They don't know what to do about Medicare. We got a lot of senior citizens who are confused about Medicare. Join Chapter Medicare. You're going to love them. Hashtag 250 on your cell phone, and keywords are Chapter Medicare. The operator, come on. Okay, I want to talk to Chapter Medicare. Tell them all your woes. Tell them why you hate Medicare, and they'll take care of you at Chapter Medicare. I've got a brand new audience in Hudson Valley. They've never met Alfredo Ortiz before. Alfredo is the longtime president of the Job Creators Network. Alfredo, I picked up 3 stations in the Hudson Valley, the Beacon, and they are fabulous stations. You know the Hudson Valley, full of Knicks fans, full of Yankees fans, full of Giants fans, but we'll talk to them anywhere. But they won't know anything about the Job Creators Network. And you've been a sponsor of mine for, 15 years. Tell them what JCN is and who started it and Bernie Marcus and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, Hugh. And once again, thank you for having me. Great organization founded by the late, great Bernie Marcus, who unfortunately left us last November. But he started this great organization because he remembered what it was like when he started Home Depot with just 2 stores in Atlanta, how difficult it was to start those 2 stores. And it was way back when. And he knew that small business owners needed an actual organization that truly did advocacy work for them. And it wasn't just about putting stickers on the door. It actually did work for them. And so Job Creators Network was formed, and I've been with this organization now for 12 years, actually. It's
That's
crazy.
hard to imagine. I think you've probably been on the air with me for 12 years. And your glasses are back. I like you better with the glasses, Alfredo. I recognize you.
Well, I figured, Hugh, you're the only person I wear the glasses for. So
thank you.
Because
I like it.
Appreciate it.
Are you going to wear them at the Job Creators Network Summit? Because I'm going from here in California when I'm done teaching. I got to go back to the Beltway, then I'm immediately going down to Savannah for the Job Creators Network Summit. I only think you got 150 tickets left, so if people are interested, you better tell them where to go to get it, because they're going to get mad at me, especially in the Beacon. They're going to get all excited about the lineup, and then there's not going to be any tickets.
Yeah, that's right. They have to go to JCN 2025 Summit. That's 2 M's, 1 T. JCN 2025 Summit.com. There's amazing people. Not only are they going to be able to hear you, Hugh, but they're going to folks like Governor Youngkin, Governor Kemp, Governor Reynolds. We've got media stars like Sarah Carter, Trish Regan, Mike Gallagher, Charlie Gasparino. We've got Stephen Moore, Grover Norquist, Kellyanne Conway. The list goes on and on.
Well, I'm on there. I don't know what I'm going to talk about yet. I think I'm going to talk about deporting TRA people and other Arcatelistas in the political question doctrine. But we'll find out. But it's mostly fun, isn't it?
Well, there is going to be some fun sprinkled in there, because I think that's one thing conservatives forget about. They need to have a little bit of fun, right? Let's do some work. Let's create policy discussions. And by the way, we're going to talk about some 5 great pillars of really conservative, from the conservative movement amongst all these folks. We're going to be talking about, of course, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. We're going to be talking about deregulation. We're going to be talking about education freedom. We're going to be talking about reducing the debt. What are we going to do there? Debt and deficit, which is crazy. And the Hispanic vote. As you know, Trump got 46% of the vote, but we got to make sure that for the midterms and going forward, we got to make sure we maintain that. And so what is it going to take to maintain those votes?
And it's going to be in beautiful Savannah. JCN 2025 Summit. Now, you spelled it too fast for the Steelers fans. The Giants fans are pretty fast. They're quick. They can spell it. But let's slow it down for the Steelers fan. JCN 2025 SUMMIT.com. All right?
That's right.
Very, very easy for the Steelers fan. JCN 2025 Summit.com. And there are only 150 tickets left. A lot of big entertainment, but a lot of policy talk, too. And then a couple of lawyers like me to make sure where there's not too much fun involved.
Yeah, that's right. We're even going to have Lee Greenwood. You know that Donald Trump loves Lee Greenwood, so we're going to have him there performing as well. And like I said, it's going to be a great
That's
time.
odd. He hadn't called me yet. Do you already have a bass player?
Well, you know what? I think we do, but there's always room for one more.
Well, if you need someone to sit in, let me know. I mean, there are not many names you can guess that I have not been with. And so I've never had a chance to back up Lee. So that would be, I assume he'll be singing Proud to Be an American. Alfredo,
Absolutely.
I want to talk about education choice for just a second, because while the summit matters to us, and I'll keep plugging the summit, I'm so happy you are doing educationfreedomusa.com. How's it going?
It's going great, Hugh. I mean, as you know, we were very involved in Georgia last year. We were very involved with what happened in Tennessee just recently, really helping get that over the line. And we're just involved all across the country. It's the new civil rights movement, really, making sure that our parents and our children have the best opportunity possible when it comes to education, and that they have the freedom to actually choose where to go, where to send their kids. And so
Education Freedom USA. When they go to educationfreedomusa.com, what will a listener find?
Well, they'll have an ability to really send a note to their to the legislator, basically, which is so important, because they need to know that these folks, that's what parents are looking for. That's what they're looking for their kids. So the legislators need to know that. And you'll find that on our website.
Alfredo Ortiz, always good to see you, friend. I'll see you in Savannah on May the first and second. In the meantime, I want people to go and visit jcn2025summit.com. Get your ticket. Joined by Ambassador Michael Oren, Israel's former ambassador to the United States, former deputy minister of Israel. Michael, good to see you, Mr. Ambassador. It seems like Israel's in the middle of a constitutional crisis, even though you don't have a constitution. Bibi Netanyahu announced he was firing the head of your FBI, the Shin Bet. Your attorney general, who's not appointed by your government, says he can't do it. There isn't any law on this. What do you make of this? This is nuts. You've been fighting a war for 17 months. The prime minister's got to be able to fire the head of the FBI or the Shin Bet. He's got to be able to.
Well, he could be. It's a question whether he has the legal basis for doing so. Some people say yes. Some people say no. His basis for firing the head of our FBI, the Shin Bet, Ronen Bar, was that he personally, Benjamin Netanyahu, no longer had trust. Who could put his trust in him? But the question then is in the state of Israel, not in the state of the United States, does the head of our internal security services owe his allegiance to the prime minister or to the entire government or to the state of Israel? It's not at all clear.
Now,
but
I'm not an Israeli. I'm not an Israeli lawyer.
Now,
I just say this as I teach constitutional law. I have forever. If the executive branch, which in Israel it's a unitary government, there is a constitutional Supreme Court. But if the executive branch cannot run law enforcement during a war, then law enforcement is independent of the government. That's kind of scary.
And you had a previous head of the Shin Bet coming out on TV the other night and threatening basically to blackmail the prime minister of Israel. He says, I've got criminal information about, or incriminating information about Benjamin Netanyahu. And if he proceeds to fire the current head of the Shin Bet, I will release that information. He's now being investigated by the police for blackmailing a prime minister. We're in a crisis. We're in a deep constitutional crisis right now. It is the least thing we can afford right now.
And you're in a war.
Tonight,
I just read that there were signs that Hamas was attempting to invade Gaza again today. Hezbollah shot at someone on the northern border. You're bombing Syria. And meanwhile, Donald Trump has told the Houthis and Iran, one more shot and we're done. And I take him seriously. Do you?
Very much. I think, by the way, it's a major turning point in American foreign policy. Not since Ronald Reagan in 1988 Operation Praying Mantis, if you remember. You and I are old enough to remember this.
Very well. Took them all down.
Ships, right? In retaliation for firing at Kuwaiti tankers. Not since then has the United States taken any offensive action or counteroffensive action against Iran, in spite of literally hundreds of acts of Iranian aggression against American targets, American allies, American bases, American ships, and international shippings in the Mandel Straits. Not a single bullet has been fired at Iran. And tonight, President Trump said he's going to change that policy. And I think that's a major, major turning point for the United States, for the Middle East, by the way. And I hope Israel takes that to heart. He's showing a red light to Iran. He's basically showing a green light to Israel.
Now, Michael, I think you grew up upstate New York, so you won't know the Hudson Valley. I added 3 affiliates of the Hudson Valley today. So a great group of new people called the Beacon. That's their corporate headquarters, all throughout from Albany to the north of the city, from Connecticut out to the east. So we're dealing right in the heart of your demo and my demo. And my question to you is, do you think Khamenei and the IRGC call every shot that the Houthis make?
Not every shot, but if they want the Houthis to stop, the Houthis will stop. And, it's plausible deniability for Tehran. But I think once that's made clear to the Iranians that every rocket fired by the Houthis, and I hope not just at international shipping, but also against America's ally here in Israel, by the way, those Houthi rockets and drones landed not far from where I'm speaking to you, that the American response will be directed at Iran and not just at Yemen.
Now, my next question is, if pushed to it, I think Trump is not going to be in for a dime. I think he's going to be in for $1. He's going to be in for the whole deal. And do you think Israel is prepared to work with him on a massive strike at the Iranian facilities that are trying to get a nuclear capacity?
How can I say this on public radio, right? We damn well better be ready to do that. This is an opportunity we've waited for what, more than 35 years? And it's an historic opportunity. Nothing will change in this region. Nothing. Not Hezbollah, not Hamas, not the militias. Nothing will change. unless Iran is bowed, unless Iran is neutralized. And that's just a fact of Middle Eastern politics. It's not right, left, or up or down. There's no negotiating with these people. Even if you reach an agreement with them, they're going to cheat on it. So that's it. And this is a regime that is dedicated in its DNA to the destruction of Israel and the United States. And
I also believe it would be good for the world economy. Now, I'm not an economist, and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn, but I think Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, even Qatar, which is fundamentalist and probably more towards Iran than we would like, but I think everyone who exports anything through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal would be happy to have Iran and its weapons program and its allies in ruins. Am I right?
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. And then you dry up the supply lines to Hamas and Hezbollah and these terrorist groups, not just in the Middle East, but around the world. Iran has an international terror network. It's operating in South America. It's operating in Washington, D.C. And I know because I was a target for an Iranian assassination attempt in downtown Washington, D.C. They didn't care. And that has just got to end. The Iranian regime and its terror support is an unacceptable threat to Middle Eastern and world security.
Now, Michael, correct me. I'm sure you will. I have sensed in the outlets that I read, the English language outlets from Israel, a lessening of support, not for the emotional well-being of the hostages or their families, but a hardening of resolve that the Hamas war has to be resumed and ended. Am I correct in sensing that?
Not entirely. I think that generally, the majority of Israelis would prefer to pay a very high price, maybe even a prohibitive price, to get the hostages back. And it's not just a moral issue; it's a strategic issue, because if the hostages aren't brought back, then Israeli mothers may question whether they should send their kids to the army, and whether in a next war, and let's assume maybe there's a next war coming, when there's a call up of the reserves won't come. So it goes to our resilience, our national resilience. Now, having said that, if Hamas continues to reject all of the proposals made by the envoy Witkoff, and they have rejected them, then we have to be able to look at our people in the eye and say we tried absolutely everything and more.
That's where I think we are. The Witkoff proposal is for 10 living hostages, and they tried to double play the U.S. this weekend. Not a good idea to do with Trump. And so I really do think we are this is a critical week, and I appreciate your time, Ambassador Oren. Follow him on X at Dr. Michael Oren. Always good to talk with the former ambassador. He knows what he's talking about. Let me bring you a market update brought to you each day by our friends at AmericanFederal.com. If you're buying or selling gold, do it the old-fashioned way with a guy, Nick Grovich, and his team that simply tells you what the price of gold is, adds their commission. The commission is lower the more you buy. They also buy your gold. So if you want to sell gold, you can sell it to AmericanFederal.com. I buy my gold from Nick Grovich. I do it every January. Nick is the guy. It's very transparent. It's very, what's gold trading at today? Gold's at $3,006 an ounce right now, at this moment, at this hour, $3,006. That's not the price you'll pay, because you'll pay whatever is the spot price on the day your money gets there, less the commission, or plus the commission. You'll get paid less. You'll pay more than that. But gold at this hour is at $3,006, so it's actually holding through the whole market day. Good day on the market today. The Dow's up 1%. The S&P is up 0.93%. The NASDAQ is up 0.69%. The sell-off last week was just sort of panicked, ridiculous traders trading off of ridiculous, panicky thing. The Trump economy is going to be great. Coming up after the break, Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum, he got a lot of plans on how to use American assets to lower the deficit, lower the debt, and you do not want to miss that. Doug Burgum is really one of the superstars of the Trump 2 cabinet, and Secretary Burgum's a friend of mine. He's going to be joining me, and we're going to talk at length about the plans to build houses and sell oil and sell mineral rights and grazing rights. I hope he's going to open up the offshore drilling. No reason to have a $37 trillion debt. We got lots of things that we can sell. The good news is bureaucrats have been so bad at this for so long that they haven't been able to pull it off. The other good news is Doug Burgum is really smart, and the team he's put together is really smart, and they will be able to pull this off. I also think they'll be able to make it easy for the United States Senate to find more revenue to make the Trump tax cuts permanent as opposed to merely 5 years. Move it through the Senate parliamentarian if they get the money from interior asset sales. So Doug Burgum coming along to talk about that. Also, the Chinese are just digging coal. They're not very concerned about all of our global warming issues. Neither am I. I believe we'll adapt quite easily. I do think the climate is getting warmer. I don't think it's the end of the world. And I think it'll make it easier to drill some places. And I'm just not that worried about it. So if you're looking for climate alarmism, you've come to the wrong place. To my new friends on WGHQ, WLNA, and WBNR in the Hudson Valley, New York, you've come to a common sense conservative, and I've been doing this a long time. There's a picture of Reagan behind me on my wall in the Studio West. I broadcast, by the way, sometimes from California, sometimes from the Beltway, which is my home, and sometimes from way up north in Maine. That's when I drive through the Hudson Valley, is when I go from the Beltway to Maine, when it becomes insufferable there in the summer. But in the winter, I come out here, where I spent 27 years practicing law and where I still teach law. Let me remind you, Pragertopia.com is still out there. Dennis is still out there talking to every day. Give a little touch of Dennis.
I always talk to strangers. It is one of the joys of my life. I have massive opportunities because I'm on the road so much. I have this contest with me. Can I make the person in the elevator laugh?
He always does. Join Pragertopia. If you're missing Dennis during his recovery, just join Pragertopia. Governor Doug Burgum is now Secretary of the Interior. Doug Burgum, he joins me from Washington, D.C. Secretary Burgum, welcome. It's the first time I've talked to you in your new job. I hope you're having fun.
I'm having a blast, Hugh, and it's great to be on with you.
Well, I want to start right out of the gate. Wall Street Journal notes this morning that there are 47 million acres owned by the federal government, 7.3% of all federal land, that's it. But it falls within metropolitan areas that need more homes. If you entitle that, and you clear off the NEPA, CEQA, Endangered Species Act, Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act obstacles, entitle it, turn it over to BlackRock, you can get 1 million homes built. You can get 10 million homes built, and you can make a lot of money to reduce the debt. Are you going to do that?
Well, we're certainly taking steps to try to help on what is a national housing crisis. As you know, Hugh, we've had housing starts have fallen way behind household formation. I mean, there's some estimates that for our active workforce right now, 10 million homes are needed. So this would, and land cost is a big part of it, and particularly in our communities out west, where the federal government owns 80% of Nevada plus 60% in Utah. We've got some fast-growing, low regulation states that are attracting businesses, and they just don't have the land to be able to do that. So when a shortage of land is driving up the cost of housing, so we can be a part of that.
I spent 3 years. I'm a retired lawyer. I spent 3 years trying to get the BLM to sit down with the city of North Las Vegas and one of my old clients to do a giant land swap. It never went anywhere. BLM had no interest in doing anything, Mr. Secretary. Do you think you can get the bureaucracy to move to actually put land like Lincoln did into the private sector?
Well, we certainly can in southern Nevada because there was a powerful senator named Harry Reid that passed the Southern Nevada Lands Act, which gives us more flexibility in southern Nevada and Clark County than any place else in the country to go effectuate what you just described.
All right. Mr. Secretary, let's talk about the other resources, because I've been listening to a book called The Prize by Daniel Yergin. For 150 years, we just gave away everything that the United States had when it came to oil and minerals and coal, et cetera. You're not giving anything away, but are you going to sell it or lease it or do a profit split on it?
Well, the current approach, of course, is to actually do what we have this enormous resources. And by the way, I love that you bring up The Prize and Daniel Yergin. I was interviewed by him on stage. What an honor. I mean, The guy's got such a great perspective. At one of the big events down at CERAWeek, which is the largest global energy conference. So, but wasn't the first time, but it was still very cool to be interviewed by Daniel on stage. And then I saw him this last weekend at another conference. So I saw him twice last week. He's incredible. That book is amazing. But I would say that everyone knows that the United States has got $36.5 trillion of debt, because that gets pounded into all of us every time there's a presidential election. And that's a number that almost any politician can repeat, $36.5 trillion. And if you ask the general public, or ask the same politician, say, hey, what's our national assets? No one has an answer because we don't even really keep a balance sheet at the federal level. We need to. One of the things that this administration, from Scott Bessent, Howard Lutnick, Chris Wright, myself, anybody that's involved in trying to balance the budget, is like, we got to understand what the asset side is. And if you take just interior alone, there's 480 million acres. The number you had earlier was the stuff that's near urban areas. 480 million acres of surface, 700 million acres of subsurface, 2.5 billion acres of offshore acreage, that could be rich with critical minerals as well as oil and gas. All of these are on the assets of our country. And if every family owns a piece of those liabilities, then every family owns a piece of these assets, and our job is to go get a return. Interior, if it was a standalone company, the Department of the Interior standalone company would have the largest balance sheet of any company in the world. And we would also, if you ranked us up against every other large balance sheet company, we'd have the poorest returns. Because under the Biden administration, we restricted or slowed down everything from giving a grazing lease. If we have a grazing lease to a rancher in Wyoming, they send a check to the federal government. If we have a timber lease, they send a check to the federal government as well as help clean up our forests. If it's an oil and gas lease, they bid on and pay us upfront lease sales to develop. And as you said, they give us a royalty going forward without us having to take any risk. We don't have to buy the equipment, hire the employees, whatever. We get a percentage at the gross, sometimes as high as 18% of the gross comes back into the Treasury. So if you want to help balance the budget in America, one of the things we do is we go out and get a return on the assets that belong to the American people. And when these acreages are put away, I'm not talking about our national parks and the last best places. I'm not talking about wilderness areas. I'm talking about the fact that we have hundreds and hundreds of millions of acres above and below ground that were put there for the benefit and the use of the American people, and that's what we intend to do in this administration.
I want to talk to you about coastal drilling. I spend most Saturdays down at Huntington Beach, and there are drills off there. It's much safer now to do slant drilling from the coast, but you can still do platform drilling. California Coastal Commission gets in the way. They can be preempted. If you go to the Congress and say, put in the Budget and Reconciliation the authority for us to drill off the California coast, the Gulf Coast, the Atlantic coast, you'll be rolling in dough and they can make the tax cuts permanent. But you got to get the California Coastal Commission and the NIMBYs out of the way. And by the way, they don't screw up the landscape. They don't cause spills. It's perfectly safe.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct on all accounts, Hugh. And again, with California and New York, California used to be a great energy producing state. New York has the potential to be one now with the Marcellus. These are two states that have the highest out-migration, among the highest taxes in the country. They've got some of the biggest urban issues of anybody in the country, and they could be lowering taxes because they could also be participating in helping America with energy independence, helping us sell energy to our friends and allies in the fields that are off the coast of California. There is one there that we think we can get restarted. It's 40,000 barrels of oil a day. It's one of the projects that we're working on as part of the National Energy Dominance Council. And again, I would encourage anyone in California that's listening if you care about the environment in those two states, then you should be insisting that we do the energy development in the United States because we do it cleaner, safer, smarter, healthier than anywhere else in the world. And then that will help lower your taxes, help you pay for schools, help you pay for roads. Just like there's a reason that, places like Texas have no income tax. And there's places like New York have the highest because Texas is willing to safely and smartly and cleanly develop the resources that they have.
Can we talk about placing and monetizing small modular reactors, Secretary Burgum? Because I didn't know anything about SMRs until I sat down with you for dinner one night and you gave me an education. I'd like the country to know SMRs are safe. They can raise the level and reliability of our grid. They can be protected against Chinese Communist Party hacking, and they can make us a lot of money and power the future.
Yes, they sure can. In the first S in the small modular nuclear reactor in the SMRs is that they're small, and it's also a modular in the sense that these when a design is approved once, they can be built in a factory and they can roll out. And as you build more units in any business, as you produce, the 10th, the 20th, the 30th, the 40th small nuclear reactor, when you're doing those, you're lowering the cost. And so we can get the cost down, and we've got, clean baseload electricity. It's persistent. It runs 24 hours a day, runs for years. All of the issues with nuclear waste are also in a completely different category, meaning less of a much smaller problem, smaller footprints. And whether you're a military base, somewhere in a remote part of the world, or if you're Alaskan fishing village that's hundreds of miles away from the nearest road. I mean, we have communities in America, like in Alaska, that don't have roads. The cost of trying to string transportation to those places is very difficult. I mean, these are the perfect answers for us to get electricity to everyone at low cost remotely. But timing-wise, there's a lot of innovation. The private sector is back in. We've over-regulated and killed this industry like a lot of industries in America the last 30 years. Innovation is flourishing in the nuclear space, but we're talking 5 to 7 years before these things start rolling out. Some are being built right now and being prototyped and being brought forward, but it's not going to help us in the short term. We have an electricity crisis. It's one of the reasons why President Trump declared a national energy emergency, and the way we're going to fill that gap right now with the clean, affordable, reliable base load, natural gas is going to be the play in the next few years. And if we don't do that, we're going to not. Electricity becomes intelligence. Electricity becomes intelligence. We're manufacturing intelligence in these AI data centers, and it's whoever's got the most electricity wins. And China is adding electricity like crazy, and the U.S., we've got to catch up in our electricity production.
Stand by for 30 seconds, Secretary Burgum, while I send the note down the line that we're going to go to break and come back with Secretary Burgum during the break, and then he'll be back after the break. We got a lot to cover because there's a lot of money to be made, a lot of progress to be put into place, and a lot of initiatives to get going. Secretary Burgum's working 24/7, 365 at the Department of the Interior, along with Chris Wright in Energy, Scott Besson at Treasury, and the Republicans in the Senate to get this stuff going, and we need it to go fast. President Trump wants to go fast. Secretary, are you working with Scott Besant and the Republicans to help them figure out how to add revenue to the reconciliation budget process via the sale or lease of our resources so they can make the tax cuts permanent?
We sure are, and I would say that everybody across the administration is working with their, respective, because, Senate leaders, congressional leaders, we got responsibility for it because there's all these ways we can do it. I mean, one of the things that President Trump has advocated for, is fighting for, is for us to get the Constitution pipeline built across New York. It's a 124-mile, very simple-to-build pipeline taking natural gas from Pennsylvania, low cost and clean, get it connected into the Northeast. We've got people stranded in Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, in New England, paying some of the highest prices in the country for electricity and for heating their homes. I mean, one estimate is that a family would pay $2,300 less a year in a place like Connecticut if that pipeline got built. It got killed twice by New York and Cuomo not giving a single water permit to cross a stream. And so President Trump, national energy emergency, we get that thing built. When you do that, what do we also have? We have a program called Low-Income Heating Assistance Program. One of the things we're looking at right now in real time is how much money are all of the taxpayers that are listening from the taxes they pay to the federal government that go to pay for someone to help cover their heating bills in New England. Maine, 80% of the people are heating their homes with heating oil. Where that heating oil is coming from? It's coming from overseas. I mean, you can go to Boston on any given day. Prior to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we were offloading 400,000 barrels of oil a day equivalent of things like Russian natural gas, because between the Jones Act and no pipeline, we had foreign oil coming into New England. We have foreign oil that comes into Southern California at Long Beach. Why is that? Because we block building pipelines, and then things cost more. And in a place like New England, taxpayer dollars. If we can build that pipeline, lower what we pay in taxes to those families, it's like giving them a $2,300 tax break, but then it's also giving everybody who's listening a tax break because we don't have to pay the heating assistance. That's the kind of thing that if we understand those system economics, put them in the reconciliation bill, that is permanent.
That's the music I'm looking for. If you put them into the reconciliation bill, notwithstanding any other law, notwithstanding NEPA, the Endangered Species Act, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, then you build the pipeline. Is the Senate open to that? Are they working with you on that?
we're absolutely working on that, and a number of other things. We have to be able to build linear infrastructure in this country. We have to get past the day when I say pipeline, you say protest. We hurt the environment, we hurt America, we help our adversaries when we do that, and it's the same thing with critical minerals. I mean, we've killed mining in this industry, and now we find ourselves in this precarious, risky national security situation where China controlling 85% of the processing on the rare earth minerals that we need for national defense, for technology, and so we've got to bring it all back. We've got to bring it back to the United States.
Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum, one of the smartest people in America, and I'm so glad he's an Interior because it is a nightmare of an agency. I'm a retired lawyer, but I used to deal with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the BLM, the land reclamation people. I used to deal with them all the time. God bless their souls, they don't do anything. And so let's cover three things in 9 minutes, Mr. Secretary. Mining in America, liquefied natural gas, and then forestry management. Let's start with mining. Can we get the mines open and going again?
We can. For the first time in decades, there's capital that's forming, coming from around the world. People see the national security risk that we have, and there's certainly an interest to hear is ideas that are being kicked around about creating a strategic critical minerals reserve, just like we have the strategic petroleum reserve. We'd have to do this for as many as 20 different minerals, but we could be stockpiling those materials here. And also you've heard Lutnick and Besant and others, all of us talking about the Sovereign Wealth Fund. I mean, what a great opportunity. If our country's going to prosper, why don't we take and put some equity in our Sovereign Wealth Fund that was talked about creating into these mining companies.
You're an entrepreneur, Governor. You might object to this, but I've always thought that the rule of law in America that allows private equity to open up, that at least 2 to 5% of every new initial public offering ought to come into the federal treasury gratis, because we protect their intellectual property and provide the rule of law. What do you think about that as a private equity guy? That, hey, welcome to the club. You get the list, you get the trade, but you owe us 1 to 5% of the initial round.
Well, as a free market guy, I would say that sounds a little bit like a tax. But if we said, hey, we get an option, we get to decide. If you got a good IPO, we want 5% of it. We get first dibs. We could be making a lot of money for the taxpayers.
All right, fair enough. Let's go to liquefied natural gas. I saw a big announcement in Louisiana. There's got to be so much of this. This has got to be like when Beaumont, I told you, I've been reading the prize, when the gushers would get up. We must have so much liquefied natural gas, we don't even know where it is.
We have so much of it. We are so fortunate. I mean, when you take a look at our country today, now the world's largest producer of oil and gas, China, the world's largest importer. I mean, this is our big advantage. I mean, you're reading the prize. I mean, we're in a position where if we just get out of our way from a regulatory standpoint, we've got the power to sell energy to our friends and allies. We have the energy and the power here to bring prices, inflation down at home, and we have the ability to build out new electrical sources to win the AI arms race. We can do it all. The only barrier right now is the federal regulatory environment.
Now we have two barriers. One is water in some places, and we ought to be doing desalinization, not trains to nowhere in the Central Valley. I don't know why Governor Newsom won't do desal. Any chance that you could do pipelines from the Great Lakes? I know it gets my friends in Ohio crazy when I bring this up, but there's a lot of water up there. Can we pipeline it places?
I think with human ingenuity, anything is possible. We've got enormous water resources in our country. Sometimes they're not just in the right places. But yeah, we're talking about one of the key things we have to do. We're building an 800-mile LNG pipeline from the North Slope of Alaska to the southern Alaska, a port that's open year-round, sell LNG to Japan, Korea, Vietnam, the Philippines, all of our allies in the Pacific. That strengthens our security there. That's a project that the president's also talked about. He included in his State of the State speech. We're going to be building amazing infrastructure in this country again, and it's part of why we're heading towards an age of abundance.
Now, I'm so glad to hear you say that. We do have one danger, which is our forests are terribly managed. That's because the habitat conservation plans that are necessary to do forest management are held up by an agency under your purview, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They do a lot of nothing at great length. Are you going to make it so that we can manage our nation's forest, our federal forest, via HCPs that come out quickly from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service?
Well, the quick answer is yes, we're going to do that. And, of course, forests are in two places. The Bureau of Land Management, we got forests all over the West. So does the U.S. Forest Service, which is under the Department of Agriculture. Brooke Rollins and I, working together, want to have unified approaches to this, but we have to be doing forest management, and forest management includes that we give permits to allow people to have a timber industry, because when they're out there building roads, that helps with forest fire management, helps get the load down in those forests. The worst air quality we've had in our country has nothing to do with point solutions like manufacturing or power plants. It has to do with fires.
Yes.
And if we want to solve the air pollution issue in this country, we've got to get back into forest management. And when we do that, we can revive these timber towns. The mills have all closed. We're importing timber from other countries when we've got a great history of here in our country. So yeah, there's multiple wins. And by the way, you do that right, and the wildlife also wins. We have healthy forests, you have healthy wildlife.
And my last question is a request, Governor. Artificial intelligence is pretty amazing. If you ran the list of endangered species and subspecies that the federal government maintains through AI, and you asked them which of these species are really endangered, you'd lose half of them. They're not endangered. They're not threatened. They've been put on that list because of absurd statistical calculations about past habitat loss projected into the future. Will you harness AI to straighten out the ESA list?
Well, we're going to harness AI as we did in North Dakota to try to improve government every which way we can. And that's a great application that you've described. And we want to get to a culture where in America we're celebrating when a species comes off the endangered species list as opposed to celebrating when they go on. But some people celebrate because when they go on, it means fundraising for the groups that are, anti-fossil fuels, anti-U.S. energy. And I would say the last thing on AI, not only can we go through the list, but I would stay tuned. I mean, this is advancing so fast. I mean, one of the things that we're going to see, I predict in the not too distant future, is that we're going to see de-extinction. I think we're going to be able to bring species back with AI.
I think you can too. I also hope in those reconciliation talks you have with the Senate, you strip citizen standing out of the Endangered Species Act, because it's just abused by people to stop projects that we need. Infrastructure, housing, forest clearance. You know this drill, Governor. You were a governor. You know how these laws are abused by no-growth extremists.
Absolutely, I do. And when I left office on December 15th, at the end of 8 years, we still had 30 active lawsuits going against the federal government, and that was less than Wyoming and Montana and Idaho and Utah. All have got greater portions of their states in federal land. They had even more lawsuits. I mean, we've not only tread on citizens and private sector rights, but the federal government, one of the most weaponized laws in history has been the Endangered Species Act, and states across the West were fighting back.
Last question is a fun one, Governor. How much fun is it working with Donald Trump and the cabinet? What's the energy level like?
Energy level is through the roof. It's incredibly fun. America needs to know. I mean, not only have the hardest, working president perhaps ever, but when he does an executive order, he does an EO. It's not just a photo op. In that EO, it says, Secretary Burgum, Secretary Chris Wright shall do in 15 days or in 30 days.
Huh.
There's very specific executive action which we're being held to. So he's being clear in his direction. He's empowering us to get our work done. He's holding us accountable. That's what great leaders do, and that's happening every day in this administration. It's really fun.
Secretary Burgum, thank you for joining me. Good luck in every single line item that I've gone through. We've gone through a lot. Get out there and beat the Chi-Coms, because they're making coal like they're just digging up coal like by the gazillion acres.
Yeah, well, 194 gigawatts of coal that China's brought on in the last 12 months. 1 gigawatt would cover Denver, so that's like the equivalent of power generation for 2 Denvers a week for the last year. They're the largest CO2 emitter in the world, and they're doing all that because they want to beat us in the AI arms race. We can't lose.
Thank you for that, Mr. Secretary. Have a great, great day. Always a pleasure. Come back anytime and enjoy the prize. I'm jealous that you got to sit down with Dan Jurgen. What a book. Thank you, Secretary Burgum. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you. I hope you're having a great one. I'm having a great one because I added 3 affiliates to my hundreds of affiliates. And, it's so great to add them on St. Patrick's Day because it makes Gallagher jealous. My buddy Mike Gallagher, great talk show host. He's on in the morning. But I get the guys in the Hudson Valley where there are a bunch of folks driving off to enjoy St. Patrick's Day parade or party. Whatever you're doing, put the green on. You're talking to a son of Ireland. I'm an orange greenman. So my dad was from Ulster. His people were from Ulster. They're all from St. Field, Ireland. and my mom's people are from County Clare, so I'm a mixture. I can go either way. But we have fun on St. Patrick's Day, but I really want to welcome WGHQ 920 and 92.5 FM, 1260, 96.5 FM, that's WBNR, the first one is WGHQ, and then WLNA, that's 1420 and 94.3. Now, these are Knicks fans, and so the Cavs have to crush them. I'm sorry about that. Cavs lost to Orlando yesterday. That was sort of sad as I was doing my recuperation from being ill. But, and I hate the Yankees. I'm just going to tell you right that. Now, I have a turncoat grandson who's a Yankees fan who thinks Aaron Judge didn't drop the ball. He's still traumatized by that, but he did drop the ball. And so there are turncoats. We are Guardians, Cavaliers, and of course Browns family. But we're very glad to have the Hudson Valley with us. This is Relief Factor. I've never run the New York Marathon. It's one of the marathons I haven't run. I've run Boston, L.A., the Marine Corps Marathon a half dozen times. Never got into New York. But I take my Relief Factor, and after all those miles on all those tires, I still feel great because for the past, 12 years, I've taken Relief Factor. It's the only supplement I've taken in 20 years on the air that you've listened to me. And that's because it works. It's icariin and curcumin, resveratrol, omega, natural anti-inflammatories that work with the body's own anti-inflammatory. I've been offered a lot of money to do a lot of different products over the year. I say thank you and no thank you. I only use sponsors. I only accept sponsors whose products I use. I use Relief Factor every day, and I have for a long time because it actually works. And whether you're getting older or you're exercising, you're definitely doing the former. You should be doing the latter. Relief Factor is the place to call. Call 1-800-4 and the word relief, or go to their website. Find the starter pack, $19.95. Not going to help you people who drink too much beer tonight, but it is very, very good for you to do your Relief Factor. Now, let me also remind everyone it's Lent. So I'm an Irish Catholic kid. I observe Lent. And one of the things we do is, of course, we don't eat meat on Friday, and we make a sacrifice. If you haven't made a sacrifice of some sort, please consider feeding the future of the kids of El Salvador. That country has turned it around, and Food for the Poor has been there for 40-plus years. Began just a few priests, then they added all the pastors in every church in the place. And now they feed children in school. As stability returns to El Salvador, kids are going back to school. And Food for the Poor just decided we're going to roll out and feed kids. We got a little audio, Adam, of someone talking about Food for the Poor. Let's play that.
When you see the hunger, when you see the need, you go out on the field, even if they haven't eaten for 1 or 2 days. It just makes us real sad. The more we do, the more we see the need. The more places we go, the more we find people starving. The more we see children are eating the leaves from the trees.
So please do what you can. $100 feeds a child for a year. $200 means 2 children, you Steelers fans out there. And you can do it the old-fashioned way as well. You can call 855-359-4673, 855-359-4673. Or you can text my name, Hewitt, to 51555. That's pretty easy. Hewitt, 51555. Or just go to Feed Their Future. It's a banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Hundreds of you are doing so. And you say, I'll do that for Lent. I'll skip a meal. I'll skip a couple of meals. I'll do 2 kids. I'll send $200. And you won't think about them. You won't think about them except in the course of the year. You'll say to yourself, wow, someone's eating today because it's something I did back in March, and I appreciate it. I really, really do appreciate it. I want to play for you a little bit of Donald Trump again. Cut number 5, talking about the Biden Regency.
We have thousands of murderers that Biden and his incompetency, first of all, he's grossly incompetent, but that Biden and his people and his probably autopen, it looked like we had an autopen for a president, and we would have been better off if we had probably. But it looks to me like, that's a big subject. I'm sure you won't ask about that, but the whole subject of autopen, did he know what he was doing? Did he authorize it? Or is this somebody in an
That is, by the way, it's a very big subject. And if you're a victim's family with any kind of in a statute in a state, these are all federal crimes. So I don't know who has standing to bring it. If you prove that it was an autopen signature and the president was not compos mentis, is that individual pardoned? First question of first impression, don't know. I'm going to check in on that lawsuit in D.C. during the break. I'll bring you the update. Vic Mattis is the co-host of Getting Hammered, the podcast that's always green and always smiling on St. Patrick's Day. Vic is a wonderful podcaster. He's also the weekend editor at the Washington Free Beacon. And I listen to almost every Getting Hammered. But Vic, I was hammered this weekend by the bug. So I didn't even get out of bed. All I did was take antibiotics and moan. So I'm back today. I didn't get to listen to Getting Hammered. I have no idea if you have any celebratory plans for St. Patty's Day. Are you and Mary Catherine Ham doing anything in the green?
Well, no, I haven't spoken to Mary Catherine about it yet. Of course, we're off by a day. We're taping tomorrow, so it'll be the post St. Patty's Day hangover episode. But I am going out after this show. In fact, Hugh, as soon as I'm done taping, I'm heading over to the Knights of Columbus to share a pint with my brothers. And
The Knights of Columbus. Now, that is the way we would do it in Warren, Ohio. A lot of fancy, dancy Beltway people go to the Dubliner once a year. And I can't imagine what the Dubliner's like tonight. But going to the Knights of Columbus is the way to do it. Hey, Vic, I would like your take on the events of the weekend. You're not a lawyer, but you're very smart. The fact that Trump basically adopted the Lincoln approach to Justice Taney, non-acquiescence, and sent the bad guys to El Salvador regardless of what the judge suggested. What'd you make of that?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, Hugh. I mean, you're seeing right now what's happening is a lot of these, executive actions are getting bogged down in the legal mire. I mean, it started off with Mahmoud Khalil. That's the big story, of course. And then you're having it happen now with certain illegal migrants in Colombia, back and forth, and now in El Salvador. I believe that decision, by the way, was rendered while they were in international airspace. So I understand what he's trying to do, and I think the American public is largely sympathetic with him, regardless of the legal intricacies of this, because we're not talking about innocent people trying to make a living and starting in this country and trying to live the American dream. We're talking about, members of Tren de Aragua or other violent criminal gangs. The president loves to talk about, people released from. He always makes a distinction for some reason between mental hospitals and insane asylums. I'm not so sure about that, but there are very dangerous people. Something like 11,000 convicted murderers were led into this country. I think the people are on his side.
Well, what's interesting to me is it's a case of first impression. And so I've been trying all weekend to explain to people what the political question doctrine is, the fact that Lincoln adopted non-acquiescence when told by Chief Justice Taney to release people who he was holding because of slavery issues and Civil War rebellion. And Lincoln just ignored the Chief Justice. But we haven't had non-acquiescence from a court order since the Civil War. I'm not even sure we have non-acquiescence here because the facts are a little bit screwy. But I don't think it's going to the Supreme Court. I don't think the courts want anything to do with this. Do you think that this judge is foolish enough to try and demand that Trump bring these people back?
No, I mean, it's hard to tell right now. I mean, it's a bit of a standoff, and it would be a real problem if, the further this thing advances and getting to the Supreme Court, the justices do not want to weigh in on this. So no, I mean, hopefully this gets handled some other way or somebody backs down, but we'll have to wait and see.
Now, Vic, my favorite thing in the media is when they tell us it's a 200-year-old law. What they don't tell you is that the law that was really bad that was passed at the time was the Sedition Act. That was repealed in 1920. The Congress did not repeal this act in 1920. We like this act. It's called the Alien Enemy Act, so that we can get rid of alien enemies during times of invasion, and those invasions do not have to be preceded by a war. It's like the legacy media is dumber than dumb. Are they purposefully dumb?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they want things to go a certain way, and they have a narrative they want to follow. But again, if you want to take the case of Mahmoud Khalil, they try to raise the complication of him having a green card or possibly a visa and a green card at the same time. But the truth is, if he applied for a green card, as anyone does coming to this country, you promise not to be a part or support any sort of organization that is a threat to the United States, and that is Hamas. That's a designated terrorist organization. So he puts himself in legal jeopardy right there from the outset. So, I mean, regardless of the other details. That's the first thing to think about, is whether or not he had fudged that. He came in 2022, by the way, on a passport. He says he's a Palestinian born in Syria with an Algerian passport. Again, it's a reminder of sort of the free-for-all that was the Biden immigration policy.
Yeah, I want to, again, the law is very clear here. 8 U.S.C. 1227. The Secretary of State has absolute authority to eject a green card holder for foreign policy purposes. There is no predicate. Yeah. It's a non-reviewable thing. Vic, I want to finish by telling you about the Houthis. They took one shot too many at the Truman and our ships. President had them pounded on Saturday night. He's given a warning. Do you think that warning is directed at Khamenei?
Yes, easily. I mean, I think I saw something over the weekend as well where an Iranian spokesman was trying to stress that they don't actually want to interfere in Yemeni affairs and trying to create some distance between themselves and the Houthi rebels. But unlike the previous administration, President Trump is making it very clear that we're just not going to tolerate it. And we're not also going to wait for them to attack us or other ships going through the Red Sea and then hitting them or going, tit for tat in a defensive measure. We're going after them. I hope he hits them hard.
Now, Vic, last question. You're a Jersey kid. I just added today 3 affiliates in the Hudson Valley. WGHQ 920, 92.5, WBNR 1260, 96.5, WLNA 1420, 94.3. What do Jersey kids think about Hudson Valley kids?
Oh, I think you're referring to a different state, Hugh.
Because, you are. It's New York. It's New York. It's not New Jersey.
I'm from Tom's River, and we're in the South, and so there is a clear divide there. We there's not much interaction there with the people from the North. I couldn't tell.
Oh, I thought you were from northern New Jersey.
No,
I thought you were
not
from,
at all.
Oh,
no, I'm from the South. That's a different country.
That's
so
not even close. You might as well be in the Confederacy. That's not close to the Hudson Valley. I don't. Do you like anything about the Hudson Valley? You want to say anything nice about
I'm sure they're wonderful people, but I don't spend much time up there in the great far north of the Garden State. It's a bigger state than people think.
Oh, okay. I was erroneously thinking you were a northern New Jersey guy because you're always talking about the Italian restaurants and the drive-thrus. So I'm totally.
We have them on the shore too.
I guess you do. Donald Trump went to the Kennedy Center. As you know, he removed all the leadership at the Kennedy Center. Maybe a little bit too big of a broom sweep there. There's some good people on that board like David Rubenstein. But generally, out with the old, in with the new, and especially after the Gridiron Dinner, for the first time in the history of the Gridiron Dinner, which is supposed to be a nonpartisan event, they did not toast to the health of the president. It's like the legacy media plus important people in D.C. get together once a year to allegedly have fun. First time in the history of the Gridiron Dinner, they did not toast to the head of the country. There's a head of state, head of government, and it's never not been done. So you know that Donald Trump is at war with the Beltway. And the Beltway has a great love of the Kennedy Center. I do. I proposed to the fetching Mrs. Hewitt on the top of the Kennedy Center. And I love the Kennedy Center. I love everything about it. Got friends who go to it. I've been to it in a few years. It's a nice building. But I do believe that this deep rancor, this Trump derangement syndrome, is for real. And it sees the Beltway, and they just hate Trump. And they haven't figured it out yet. The American people are supportive of Donald Trump in a big time. I had Harry Enton pointing out on CNN this weekend, the Democrats' poll numbers are horrible. Horrible. Like 29%. Well, here's Donald Trump at the Kennedy Center, cut number 29.
Thank you very much. We're here to have our first board meeting at Kennedy Center, and it's in tremendous disrepair, as is a lot of the rest of our country, most of it because of bad management. This is a shame what I've watched and witnessed. They spent a fortune, $250 million, and they built these rooms that nobody's going to use, rooms underground. And I've often wondered, what are the big cubes that they have outside that block the view? They're cubes with a door in them so that people can get down to rooms that nobody's going to use. and it's a shame. It's a shame. The other thing is we're going to have a little problem with some people that work here. We had Lee Greenwood wanted to sing a little song today, and because of the cost in the union structure, for him to sing a song just for the board, just a board meeting, it was going to cost $30,000. That doesn't sound too good. They wanted $30,000 to move a piano, so you can't have that. So we're gonna fix it up. But it's really emblematic of our country. But the Kennedy Center, you look at the columns outside, you look at, I mean, they're supposed to be covered by something, whether it's marble or whatever, granite. They were never covered. They were painted. But bringing it to more modern times, a lot of money's been given to it, and the money has not been properly spent. They built rooms underground with no windows, no nothing, that will not be used ever. You're not going to have people use them. It's such a waste of money, such a terrible waste, but we'll bring it back, we'll make it great again. But it is so much like what I'm witnessing.
It's a remarkable thing that Donald Trump is at the Kennedy Center. The broom is swinging very, very, very quickly and widely. And Americans are generally applauding. Joined by Senator Tom Cotton of the great state of Arkansas, chairman of the Senate Intel Committee. We have a lot to cover. Senator, we have 3 new affiliates up in the Hudson Valley that may not know you're a Red Sox fan, so we won't tell them about that. They're all Giants and Yankees and Knicks fans, so they might not like that. Let me begin with the very serious thing that at this hour there is a hearing underway in Washington, D.C. on President Trump's decision to send plane loads of terrorists and cartelistas to El Salvador and I believe Venezuela, despite, ambiguous phrasing from the bench. And I think it's a non-justiciable political question. What do you think?
Well, Hugh, it's good to be on with you. Maybe it's on. I saw, though, that the Department of Justice over Pam Bondi's signature filed an hour or two ago a motion to vacate the hearing because there's no ground for a hearing. This judge, I would say a rogue judge, on Saturday tried to intervene with an overseas military flight to redirect it back to the United States. It was already out of U.S. airspace, out of the judge's jurisdiction, with depraved terrorist gang members, known murderers and rapists, going to our good friends in El Salvador. Therefore, the administration fully complied with his order, which was later reduced to a written order that didn't even say that. So I'm not sure what the basis for a hearing is or what the issue is here. But if they go forward with the hearing and this rogue Obama judge, again, tries to interfere with the president's core responsibilities as commander-in-chief, I can't imagine but that this won't go to the Supreme Court very promptly and that President Trump's actions will be upheld. And the court will probably deliver a needed rebuke to these liberal judges all across the country who keep trying to interfere with core responsibilities of the commander-in-chief.
There's a lot to cover. I'm amused by legacy media reminding us it's a 200-year-old law. The alien enemy law is, in fact, 200 years old. It was passed along with the sedition law. The sedition law was repealed by the Congress in 1920 because they didn't like it. They chose not to repeal this law, and this law has never been tested under these circumstances of a declaration by a non-nation state actor of invasion. So it's a case of first impression. I cannot imagine the Supreme Court overruling the president, but I also don't think the Supreme Court wants to do this, Senator. Do you?
No, it's very hard to imagine, Hugh, that the Supreme Court would, again, intrude upon the president's core Article 2 responsibilities to protect the country, as if the Supreme Court tried to tell, or I should say, not the Supreme Court, a lone trial judge tried to tell the president in the aftermath of 2001 he couldn't detain and remove al-Qaeda terrorists from the country. But again, so many of these judges apparently are suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, like so many of the Democrats in the Congress who are rising up in arms and manning the ramparts on behalf of depraved, savage murderers and rapists. They're now being detained in El Salvador, or this doctor up in New England who left the country and wasn't admitted because she had gone to Hassan Nasrallah's funeral celebrating terrorism overseas. Again, you just can't make up what these Democrats are defending simply to be opposed to Donald Trump.
It is kind of remarkable, but I like to stick to the law. Secretary Rubio has all the authority he needs under 8 U.S.C. 1227 to deport green card holders who are acting in ways contrary to the foreign policy. He doesn't owe anyone an explanation. It's a non-justiciable political question. It's crazy to me that they're trying to be on the side of the bad guys. Let me move to the more important thing. On the weekend, the president ordered a massive series of strikes on the Houthis. The Biden regency is over. Apparently, the Houthis didn't know that there's a president back and the regency is over. And he has told, I think directly, the Ayatollah Khamenei, if the attacks from the Houthis continue on the Truman or our ships or on shipping, the next attacks are coming for Iran. Is that what you understood the president to say?
Hugh, the attacks against Yemen were long overdue. For 18 months, they've been terrorizing international shipping in the Red Sea, contributing to high prices here at home. They've also been targeting our sailors on U.S. Navy ships. For a year and a half, I condemned the Biden administration for its passivity. I was glad to see the president take action this weekend and then say today that there really is no such thing as the Houthi rebels in Yemen. They're just a cat's paw for Iran, and that any attack out of Yemen would be treated as an attack out of Iran. He's giving very fair warning to the Ayatollahs in Tehran. It reminds me, Hugh, of a moment late in his first term, I think it was December of 2020, when there were serious threats coming out of Iraq from paramilitary groups in Iraq against our troop station there. And President Trump said very simply, some friendly health advice to the Ayatollahs. If a single hair is harmed on an American head in Iraq, we will hold you accountable. And guess what? No hairs on American heads were harmed for the remainder of the Trump presidency.
Well, they keep shooting at our carrier. They shot at the Eisenhower when it was there. They shot at the TR when it was there. They shot at the Lincoln when it was there. They shoot at the destroyers. They've shot at the McCain. They've shot at every ship that goes through, they shoot at it. To me, the only way to stop this is to return fire, and not at the Houthis and their monster garage rockets, but at the Iranians who are supplying them. My question for you, Senator, is if the president asks your advice, would you shoot back a little, or would you shoot back in a way that destroyed their nuclear program?
Well, Hugh, I don't think a kind of modulated, tentative, hesitant, diffident response works very well when you're dealing with radical theocrats of the kind that govern Iran. So I think the president has tried to be measured. He's explained very clearly that he wants a deal to end Iran's nuclear program. He would prefer a deal, but if a deal is not in the offing because the Ayatollahs refuse it and they insist on continuing their nuclear weapons program, that we can handle it, as he sometimes says, the other way. And if it's the other way, it's going to be very bad for Iran.
When we says the other way, that does not involve ground troops, in your opinion, does it?
No, not at all. I'm not sure of any person in Washington who advocates for such a thing. This is not a choice between passivity in the face of Iran going nuclear or invading Iran and occupying it for the next 10 years. But it's of the kind of strikes that, say, Ronald Reagan conducted in 1988 to end the tanker wars after an Iranian mine struck the U.S. Navy ship in the Persian Gulf. Or for that matter, that Israel has conducted in the past in Iraq and in Syria to end nuclear weapons development in those countries. So we're not talking about ground troops, an invasion, an occupation, a so-called forever war. We're talking about the discriminate but forceful application of military power to protect our national interests. And there are few interests as vital as preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Because remember, Hugh, it's not just about a threat to Israel or our Arab friends. Iran also has an intercontinental ballistic missile program under the flimsy cover of space launch research, which could probably reach the United States in fewer than 5 years.
Would you expect that our allies in the region, not just Israel, but the Saudis, the UAE, the Bahrainis, would support action against Iran's nuclear program sites? And there are a dozen to 15 of them, if I understand things correctly.
Well, Iran has menaced not just the United States and Israel since the Ayatollahs took over in 1979, but all of our Arab friends as well. And I've spoken to many of them who, although they're worried about the threat from Iran, about Iran's missile and one-way attack drone on their country, they would welcome, I believe, a forceful American response to Iranian aggression.
Now, if we do that, Senator, what would be the impact in Beijing?
Well, I think anytime a nation acts with strength and competence to defend its vital national interests, the whole world takes note. So you imagine that Xi Jinping couldn't help but take note if Donald Trump did so. Just like Hugh, if you remember, in early 2017, between the main course and the dessert course at Mar-a-Lago with Xi Jinping and Donald Trump, Trump ordered strikes into Syria for gassing its own people and then told Xi about it.
I do remember that, and I thought it was rather an elegant display of resolve and toughness. And I think the president has signaled that. Last question, Senator. Will anyone be surprised? Will anyone have a legitimate grounds for surprise if the United States ends up in a shooting war in a shooting match, not a war, with Iran this week?
No, I don't think so, Hugh. I mean, as Donald Trump said, the Houthis from Yemen attacking our naval ships or international shipping is basically an Iranian attack because they're just a cat's paw of Iran. And he's gone out of his way to avoid this. He's given Iran more than ample opportunity to have a peaceful resolution to the threats that they pose to America and our interests. So if they don't take that peaceful resolution, then as President Trump has said, we can always handle matters the other way. And it won't be long, and it won't be involved. It'll be very fast, and it will not end well for the Ayatollahs in Tehran.
And I think the other way is getting very close to being the way. Senator Tom Cotton, thank you for joining me on St. Patrick's Day. Luck of the Irish to you. Joined by Bethany Mandel, she of Bethany Shondark fame on X. Bethany, I'm reading the typed transcript from the hearing underway in Washington, D.C., where Judge Boasberg says, here's a list of questions I want answered. You can tell me why you won't give me answers. How many planes left at any time Saturday based solely on the proclamation? How many people are on each plane? In what country did the planes land? What time did they take off? When they were in airspace? What time were the individuals on the plane and transferred to custody? And it appears as though the government's not answering his questions. What do you think?
So, I mean, I've been following the story that closely, but today during the press briefing, the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, really put a lot of folks in their place about the situation. There seems to be a lot of sympathy in the mainstream media for, the most hardened, disgusting criminals imaginable. It's a pretty incredible thing that we're witnessing, and this reflexive, knee-jerk sort of liberal decision to oppose everything Donald Trump does, even in this circumstance, is very disturbing.
It's wild. Now, I want to assure people, this is a case without precedent. We've never seen this before. It's under the Alien Enemy Act of 1798. That act was not repealed in 1920 when the Sedition Act of the same year was repealed, so Congress made a conscious choice to keep it. It has been used as recently as the 1940s, but it has never before been used in the absence of a declaration of war precedent. And so it's a new set of facts. There is nothing, but there is something called the political question doctrine, which advises courts to stay the hell away from things if they don't know what they're doing. I don't think this judge has any idea who these people are or why they're being sent away or what they did. He should be asking, are they American citizens? If they're American citizens, it's a different question. If they're not, I don't care. What do you think, Bethany?
Yeah, I mean, I think that disturbingly he probably does know. And again, like we're seeing across the judicial sphere this knee-jerk opposition to everything Donald Trump does. We saw it with the Columbia green card student as well. I think that they've decided that opposition to Donald Trump is the holiest of holies they can possibly achieve, no matter what he's doing. There was a crazy Daily Beast story that landed today, I think, that outlined how Donald Trump lured a GOP congresswoman into his bed, and the woman came forward and was like, I had preeclampsia and I got on Air Force One, and he said if I needed to lay down, I could. That was the story. I mean, this is the lengths to which, anyone who opposes Donald Trump will go. It's really disgusting.
I do believe TDS is real. And when the Gridiron Dinner, for the first time in its history, did not toast the president at its conclusion, but instead toasted the First Amendment, it tells me there's a culture war inside the Beltway, and the Beltway might be just a little out of touch, Bethany. Just a little bit out of touch. Because these are questions that are interesting. I'm teaching the Merriman case today, which is where Abraham Lincoln basically developed the doctrine of non-acquiescence. Chief Justice Taney, who was a slaveholder and a bad man and wrote Dred Scott, kept telling him to do X, Y, and Z, and Lincoln just ignored him. I don't think the Supreme Court is going to be in a hurry to take this case. They don't want to embarrass their colleague, but they're not going to tell the President of the United States what to do with foreign terrorists and cartel members.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly true. I mean, the executive branch has a lot of leeway on this, as they do, with the Columbia case as well. I live in the Beltway, and I've witnessed the absolute mania that has gripped a lot of people in a way that didn't happen 4 years ago. And I think a lot of it has to do with Doge, that they're firing everyone around them, and it feels a lot like the Hunger Games here. Not for me, obviously.
But the Capitol's under siege. It's countryside versus the Capitol.
Yes. And, I'm neighbors with a lot of these people. And, there's a lot of circumstances where I think Doge is going too far. But there's a lot of circumstances where I'm just sort of sitting back and saying, as an American taxpayer, I think this was long overdue.
How about his visit to the Kennedy Center today? Again, the Kennedy Center is part of the Washington elites club. Like the Gridiron, like and we're not talking about government employees here. We're talking about the Washington, D.C. elite. Now, I haven't been a part of the Beltway most of the last 40 years. I lived there from 83 to 89. I left. I came back in 2016. I'm still there, but I get out a lot because I don't like the Beltway. I think the Beltway is it's not a normal place, Bethany. It's just not.
I kind of like it here. I know I'm not supposed to say that. I enjoy the Kennedy Center. He wants to name me to the board. I'm all for it. I go there very frequently. We have a lot of opportunities here in the nation's capital that, are afforded to us by our proximity to the executive branch and the government. But the Kennedy Center, one of my favorite Kennedy Center stories was on the 4th of July. I'm not kidding. This is a real thing that they ran last year, a play called 1776, using female and transgender actors to portray the founding fathers to make them more, I wouldn't say representative because they have women and
it's so woke. I like a lot of people on the Kennedy Center board. I really do. David Rubenstein is a great patriot he's no longer on the board, but he's done great things for America, like restore Monticello and the Washington Monument. He's a philanthropist. He's not particularly ideological. But I'm talking about a cultural mindset that it's really become Paris 1789. Yes. Now, I don't want to have a French Revolution, but not toasting the president at the Gridiron, I know that's an obscure little thing, but I'm offended by that. I really, he's the head of state. That's a choice. That's like the Oxford Resolution. We will not fight for king and queen in 1936?
Yeah. No, I'm seeing it here a lot. The level of anger is, again, unlike anything I saw 4 years ago. And it's because of Elon Musk.
Really? Now, the only person I know that owns a Tesla is a Navy SEAL. So if someone scratches a swastika on that Tesla, I think they might be sorry. I don't like Teslas. I think they're ugly, and I don't believe in electric cars, and I hate the Cybertruck. But what is wrong with people scratching swastikas?
Can I tell you a funny story about a Cybertruck?
Yeah.
Some stupid teenagers were driving around my neighborhood last week, and they were sitting on top of the Cybertruck. So it was very dangerous. It's super illegal. And somebody commented on our local next door chat that said, there's a lot of federal workers in this neighborhood, and they find it so threatening and scary to see a Cybertruck driving around. And I thought to myself,
man, next door in the Beltway must be wild right now.
Wild.
I hadn't thought about next door. Next door makes me laugh in California, but it must be. I haven't been in the Beltway since Trump came back, but next door in the Beltway must be absolutely crazy.
It's so fun. It's like my guilty pleasure.
Bethany, oh, so good to talk to you. Bethany Mandel, you can listen to her on give us your podcast, Bethany.
The Mom Wars podcast.
The Mom Wars podcast. Normal podcasting for normal people, even though they have a Beltway following. Oh my gosh, that's very funny. Next door in the Beltway. That must be wild. Next door in California is about coyotes eating cats and teenagers, which is what it is everywhere. But in the Beltway, it's about Teslas. Unbelievable. I'm so pleased to welcome Andrew McCarthy. Andrew McCarthy, of course, not one of our Italian friends from New York, but a good old Irish Catholic kid from New York. And Andy, coincidence number 2 is that today I picked up 3 new affiliates in the Hudson Valley. And the Hudson Valley affiliates are I got to make sure I get them in front of me so I don't get them wrong. They're called The Beacon, WGHQ 920 AM, 92.5 FM, WLNA 1260 AM, WBNR 1420. Is the Hudson Valley Yankee land or is it Mets land?
You know, back in the day, Hugh, New York was still kind of a National League town. I really think the Yankees made big inroads in the Hudson Valley, just like they did throughout the city. Not just in those great teams in the 70s, but in particular the great teams they had in the 90s over the turn of the century, where they really took the city over. But I have hope that things are changing.
Well, I know they're Knicks fans. I got told by my program director.
Oh, yeah.
And that's too bad because the Cavs are going to crush the Knicks. Okay, third coincidence. St. Patrick's Day, Andy McCarthy's on. We're on the Hudson Valley for the first time. And we're talking about ex parte McClellan, Korematsu, and the non-acquiescence doctrine, political question, stuff that we've never, this is a case of first impression. And as we speak, Andy, the judge, a district court judge, has the Department of Justice in front of him in a special hearing, and it appears that the DOJ is not answering his questions.
Right.
Have you ever seen anything like this?
I haven't, Hugh, but I have to say, I had the good fortune of spending the run-up to St. Patty's Day watching college baseball in Lexington, Kentucky this weekend, so I couldn't get too deep into this, but I did get deep enough to see what you were saying about it.
Well, I had the good fortune as a law clerk to work on a political question case involving terrorism. So I spent a good year working for Judge Robb on that case. So all I can remember is nobody wants to touch this stuff.
Yeah, well, look, I think two things. One is, as I sort of scoped out legally what was going on, it really powerfully hit me over the head that I don't think the administration is overly concerned about the law. I happen to think the Alien Enemies Act gambit is really problematic in that they're going to lose on that. And, we can talk about McClellan and, the Korematsu and all the rest of it. But I think what you need to look at is the post 9/11 cases, particularly, Hamdi, Razul, and Boumediene, where the court made it very clear that even enemy combatants in wartime who are detained overseas have a right to challenge their detention in court. I don't agree with those cases, but they are Supreme Court cases.
So, Andy, my reaction to those, tell me your quick is that was not this court, that was Anthony Kennedy's court and Stephen Breyer's court, and Boumediene especially is bad law. And I don't think the Supreme Court wants to take this case as a vehicle to overturn those cases.
Right.
But I do believe they'll have to if they take the case, which is why I think this case will never get to the court.
Yeah, well, I think, as a matter of the first instance, we have to put ourselves in Judge Boasberg's shoes, which I think, unfairly, I'm not a Boasberg fan.
He's not a bad guy. He's not a bad judge. He gets along with everyone. He's not a terrible, crazy judge.
Yeah, I wasn't crazy about his FISA rulings. He was the chief judge of the FISA court, I think, for a while, and I think he did a lot more to. I can't blame him for this. They're trying to preserve the system. I think the system should be dismantled. I know that's a conversation for another day, but I don't think he's a terrible judge. But whether I thought he was the worst judge in history or not, he's bound to follow those decisions. So obviously he would have, since what Trump is trying to do here is not only unprecedented, well, it's not, I mean, it's precedented in the sense that we've had 3 congressionally declared wars where this statute was invoked.
All right, hold on. While I go to break, I'm going to talk with Andy. During the break, I'm going to talk with him on the other side of the break. Don't go anywhere, America, because Andrew McCarthy, for the benefit of my new audiences, actually knows what he's talking about on terrorism cases, unlike 99.99999% of people who say anything about it on air anywhere. I want to go back to the Bethany trio. Those were combatants, unlawful combatants, brought to the United States, invested with rights by a series of decisions with which we can agree or disagree. I don't like them.
No. Well, wait now. They were enemy combatants who were held outside the United States, which is, I think, a pretty significant
Okay,
fact.
weren't they on American territory, though? Weren't these all Gitmo cases?
No, that's, you're thinking of like Padilla, which opened the whole...
Okay.
Padilla was an American enemy combatant who they decided to detain here as an enemy combatant, and that was a big to-do over whether they could do that, when he was an American citizen and the courts were open and functioning. And we got... You would have loved this. You did love it at the time. We got into the German saboteur.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yes. But I put that all over on the side because we're not trying to prosecute these people to put them to death. We're just ejecting them. That's why I'm trying to draw a big division between the president is simply ejecting people from our country who have invaded it under a declaration never been seen before of a non-nation state party invading our country, allegedly aligned with a nation state party, but we don't know that. And so I just think it's utterly without precedent, and I'm not even sure those 3 cases or Padilla apply. So argue to me that they should.
Well, I think, first of all, the issue in those cases was whether habeas corpus was available to people who were challenging their treatment. No one was trying to put those guys on trial, by the way. It was their detention as enemy combatants and the disposition of them under those circumstances and whether that was appropriate. So it certainly seems to me that since what these guys are trying to... These guys were in the United States where the court is open and functioning. They've never been prosecuted for terrorism. We have the say-so of the president and nothing else as a record that Tren de Aragua is a terrorist organization, which, they're trying to analogize it to Al-Qaeda and Hezbollah, which seems crazy to me. But wholly apart from that, Hugh, the statute we're talking about here is the reason that since the end of the 18th century that enemy or nationals of an enemy power have been detainable is because Congress jumped in and declared war. And the lesson out of the post 9/11 cases, remember, is that the court said in the absence of a true emergency, the president needs to work with Congress on a system for how we're going to deal with these detainees. And I do not see how the courts are going to turn around and say, Trump can do this on his own. No Congress, no anything. He can just bat his eyes and say they're terrorists, and then he can boot them out of the country with no due process.
I want to give him the floor. My argument is if ever there was a case for a political question abstention by the courts, it's this. Even though habeas was presented and the court was ignored, and I'm sure the judge is mad that this is an Article 2 issue, and that the statute, the Alien Enemy Act, says the president can declare he doesn't need a declaration of war. He can just declare it, and Congress has not repealed that, Andy. So I think you got 5 votes, if not 6 votes on this court to say he can do this. So talk us out of it.
Well, I couldn't disagree with that more, I'm afraid. I think, first of all, the statute mainly deals with nationals of the enemy state in wartime where Congress has declared war. And it's not enough to have de facto war. You actually have to have a congressional declaration of war. The other condition, the invasion or incursion, is obviously meant to be something that's the functional equivalent of war under circumstances where Congress hasn't had time to convene and declare war, and the president has to take action. I don't think that this is analogous to that, particularly because this is something that I think it's a crisis, and you think it's a crisis, but this has been going on for years, and I don't think anybody would say that like we're not going to analogize these guys to alien enemy combatants for any other purpose, right?
Well, I'm going to read the statute.
You're not saying, like, for example, combat operations would be.
No,
okay.
I think they are terrorists, and I think they have terrorized people. Here's the statute. Whenever there is a declared war between the United States and any foreign nation or government, not applicable, or any invasion or predatory incursion is perpetrated, attempted, or threatened against the territory of the United States by any foreign nation or government. So, and the president makes a public proclamation. So all he has to do is assert that the Venezuelan government, acting in whole or part with these gangs, has sent them into the United States for the purposes of wreaking havoc and doing the drug trade. I think that's all he has to. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me just say two things in response to that. First, one of the first things that would come into evidence is that tens of thousands of these guys were flown into the country by the Biden administration.
True, absolutely.
So, if you're going to say this is an invasion that the United States government aided and abetted, I think that's going to be a tough position in the court. And secondly, with respect to the post 9/11 cases, you made the very good point, I think, that this is basically a political question. It's about the president's Article 2 authority. I have a stack of jurisprudence, probably a mile high, for the proposition that a court has no business getting involved in the disposition of enemy combatants held overseas outside the United States territory in wartime. And it's much clearer than what we're talking about here, where these guys were actually held on civilian charges in the territorial United States. And yet the courts invaded President Bush's ability as commander-in-chief to control the disposition of enemy combatants who were being held in wartime that had been congressionally authorized.
And help me out here, Andy. Those were 5-4 decisions, right?
6-3. The most important one, I think, was Boumediene.
Yeah.
Which was 5-4 with blistering dissents from Roberts.
And I'm remembering the Roberts dissent. So I just think this court, maybe they will take it in order to get rid of Boumediene. I've always pronounced it Boumediene, by the way, and you're doing it differently. I'm going to trust your pronunciation. But they hated that decision because Anthony Kennedy kept screwing up the Bush administration. They tried again and again and again to deal with these people. And now we have this problem. The only way to end this is to let the executive be the executive and protect the country.
Yeah, I agree with you if we could be drawing on a clean slate. But I think that one of the things they're going to say, particularly because we don't have a clear situation. I know you think it's clearly an invasion. I think they're going to have a very hard time proving that, even though, 20 million people are now in this country.
Well, I'm just talking about the cartels. I don't think the invasion rhetoric works against an economic migrant. But if you can, are you proposing that the government would have to prove that there actually was a cartel and that members of the cartel have tattoos and that they have membership and they have instructions and commanders? I mean, at what level does it become onerous on the executive branch to have to prove things like this?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that and maybe I've just been too burned by the post 9/11 experience, but I think the court's inclination is going to be that the president can't do this on his own hook, that he has to go to Congress, and that if they legislate something that allows him to get them out of the country forthwith, I think the court would stay with that this time. But as you point out, the big problem with Boumediene, as Justice Scalia said, is they were just kidding, right? In the prior case, what Breyer had basically said is go to Congress, work with Congress, get assistance with Congress. They did that, and then the court threw it out anyway.
And so I know that background. I just think that the reality of the world today, and you know this better than anyone, with WMD and with the weaponry that they have and the ability, 250,000 Chinese nationals in the country, we can't be this silly anymore. You've been saying this. I sound like Andrew McCarthy, and you sound like the ACLU. I'm going to have to go lie down.
Because I've been burned on this 8 million times, and I sit here. Look, I would love Trump to be able to do this and to be trustworthy. But, look, and I don't mean to undercut him when, he's trying to do the right thing. But you can't run around saying, like, he who protects his country violates no law, and saying stuff that's going to spook the courts. And then when you want to go into them and say, oh, and by the way, give me unilateral authority to throw people out of the country, that's not the way you set up your situation. The arguments that you want to make with these courts.
Andy, we're going to have to talk a lot in the next couple of days because this poor judge, I actually feel bad for this judge. I feel bad for the D.C. Circuit. And I know that the Supreme Court doesn't want to do this either. Do you think he might just say 30 seconds? Moot. They're out of the country. Don't do it again.
No. I just think I think he's the chief judge of that very important court. He can't just let himself get defied the way they played games with him on Saturday.
Oh, boy, did they absolutely did. They punked him. And I don't like getting the courts punked. I'm not one for punking the courts. But I am for the political question doctrine and the chief executive protecting the country in times like these. Andy C. McCarthy. Follow him on Twitter at Andrew C. McCarthy. He knows more about this than anybody else in America, and he should be on Fox around the clock. Thank you, Andrew. Hope you've enjoyed the first day to my new friends in the Hudson Valley at the Beacon. Keep coming back. I got lots of great guests. I get people like the Secretary of the Interior and Senator Cotton and Andy McCarthy every day. I'm pretty interesting, but I'm not that interesting. I think guests are more interesting. I also have great sponsors, which I'll teach you about. For example, Conservatives for Lower Health Care Costs. I'm not a big fan of Big Pharma, and I know some of you work for Big Pharma. My brother worked for Big Pharma for many, many decades, retired PhD toxicologist. I call him Mycroft on the air. And they do great work. They do amazing things. They invent important drugs that keep everyone alive in the world, breakthroughs that we need. I love the scientists. I hate their lobbyists. Their lobbyists broke Obamacare. They broke the healthcare system. Now they're back, and they're trying to raise the cost that you will pay on prescription drugs. So go to pharmawindfall.com. That's their website. Stop them. Big Pharma spends a lot of money in big DC, and God bless them. I run into them all the time, and they tell me I'm too hard on them. I run into the Congress. I go up to see a member of Congress, a member of the Senate. I'm always going to find a pharma lobbyist hanging around, asking for money. They want $32 billion from the middle people, the people who provide the drugs for you at the drugstore. They want $32 billion back. No, leave it alone. Just leave the healthcare system. Every time you change it, it breaks worse. Just leave it alone. So they opposed so much for so long, pharmawindfall.com. Let me also remind you that I'm in the Relief Factor studio out west. I have a Relief Factor studio in the Beltway. I've got one up east as well. And I'm here to tell you that it works. Call 1-800-4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF, and get started. The starter pack for my new friends in the Hudson Valley, $19.95. 3-week starter pack. You're going to get up and down and be very upset at the Garden when the Knicks lose to the Cavs, so you might as well get your knees ready for that now. You're going to get all excited. You're going to be very upset when the Cavaliers beat the Knicks. So my new friends in the Hudson Valley, go to Relief Factor and find their website. You can get the starter pack, $19.95, less than $1 a day. Don't mask your pain. Get rid of it with nature's anti-inflammatories, help your body out. Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, omega. That starter pack is $19.95, less than $1 a day at relieffactor.com. Finally, our friends at Food for the Poor. It's Lent. You might have just gotten into your car. Who's this Hewitt guy? I'll tell you more about myself in the weeks ahead. We had a lot of fun today. You can go to my YouTube channel and you can find everything you want or the interviews that you missed. If you missed the Andy McCarthy piece off the air, go find it there. Tom Cotton, Doug Burgum. It's all over at my YouTube channel. Or you can go to my website, hughhewitt.com. At the top of that website, you will see that banner. If you're watching on the Salem News Channel, Feed Their Future. $100 feeds a child in El Salvador for a year. And they need to start. That country's back on its feet. They got great political leadership. Maybe just have a beer tonight, not 5, and use the extra money and send it to Food for the Poor and feed some kids who are really starving in El Salvador because they need the priests and the pastors down there. Food for the Poor. The banner is over at the top of hughhewitt.com. Feed Their Future.